All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. Have a very special guest in the studio today. We have Linda Soto, former mayor of Village of Hainesville, director of Pace Suburban Bus representing Lake County, and executive director of Lake County Transportation Alliance. That is quite the resume. Hello, Linda. How are you?
Hello, David. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show. Again, this is a new show. I think this is my second episode actually. And I'm just the whole idea is to reach out to Lake County residents, people in politics and in organizations, small businesses, events, whatever catches my eye, and kind of just give it to the county to be able to observe and witness and hopefully get involved in at some point. So this is going to be a busy time, but because of the holidays. Did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
I did. How about you?
It was very nice. It was very chill, which I like.
And with the transportation theme, I just want to give a shout out to the Illinois Railway Museum. We went out there on Saturday. They have their holiday train running, and it's a fun experience. So I highly recommend it to everyone.
Oh, where is that?
Union, Illinois.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
now,
that's west. 176 takes you all the way out there.
Is it before Woodstock or after?
Oh, it's after. It's a little south and yeah.
I think that's why west. I haven't really. The farthest west I've gone on 176 is Woodstock.
Okay.
So I've heard lots of good things about it. Like it's supposed to be extremely cool, and I keep meaning to do it. And it's just one of those things I think of when I don't have the opportunity to go, and don't think of it when I do. So yeah, that sounds very cool. Very cool. Very supposed to be very like just aesthetically cool and very magical.
It is magical, and they have not only trains, they also have trolleys, and they have an annual event where they bring in buses. So we go out there several times a year, and going since my kids were little.
That's very cool. I got to pick it up there, and hopefully I can remember this year. Okay, very cool. You are the former mayor of Village of Hainesville,
correct?
Which is cool. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what got you involved in like running for a local office like that?
Well, I'll tell you. So let's go back to the early 90s. Okay. And the building boom is going on in Central and Western Lake County. And my husband and I were looking at houses out in the area, and we settled on Hainesville. We are considered pioneer new residents because when Hainesville finally decided to let development in, we were among the first residents in the first new subdivision in Deer Point Trails.
And if you would,
so this was we moved in 1994.
So that was the beginning of the newest development in Hainesville, because it boasts of being the oldest town in Lake County.
It is. It's the oldest incorporated village in Lake County.
Yeah. Okay. So like for the longest time, they just said, "Okay, we built this much, we're done."
Yeah.
Okay. Which is, I think that's kind of
cool. So here's what's interesting. Actually, Hainesville, in its day, in 1847 forward, was quite the bustling hub of the area, and you would have expected it to grow into a bigger town because it actually had the first post office and first school out here. Sure. And what came to change that dynamic for Hainesville is when the railroad came out, they were looking at putting a station in Hainesville. And then a landowner over in Round Lake said, "Hey, railroad, I'll give you some land." And the station went over to Round Lake. And Hainesville slowly, over the next several years or decades, slowly started losing post office and everything else. So that's, that just shows you the impact that transportation can have.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's huge.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I love to have you on the show, because we're going to talk about that and how important it is. And it's nothing to be like trifled with at all. Transportation's huge. That's fascinating. I need to get somebody like a Lake County historian on the show. That'd be a fascinating show. Talk about all those.
I can direct you to several people that would give you great information.
Okay. Well, then once we end the show, hang on and I'll get those names. That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
So you were one of the first people in the newest subdivision, 1994. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so, the 1990 census of Hainesville was like 134. And I think they counted every cow and duck in the town to get it that high. So,
Mosquitoes, yeah.
yeah, so very, very small town.
Yeah.
So now here comes development. And instead of several farms and several homesteads, which were on their own well, um, now they let development in, true suburban subdivision type living. And one of the obligations of the development was to put in a municipal water system. So we move in. I have two sons. And so my first son, Jimmy, was 18 months old when we moved in. And I was very dedicated along with my husband. We said, okay, we're new homeowners. We're going to be really involved in the community. And, when my son goes to school, PTO, the works, you name it. But I never would have thought that I'd run for trustee and then for mayor. But how most people get sucked into local government, you get tied to a cause. And so our cause was a local community park. We picked our lot because of its proximity to what was supposed to be developed at Park. And long story short, while the land was donated, there was never any requirement for anybody to build the park, put money towards the park, or develop it. So we wound up being across from a big clay pit because the developer had scratched even every scratch of black dirt off the property.
That's what they do, yeah.
Yeah. So after my inquiries and other residents' inquiries, I wound up chairing a resident committee. And it took us 2 years, but we raised the money and we got the park built. So during that time, I was going to all the board meetings, did get the village to put in some funding, and I would give a report at the meetings. And then, very importantly, I was going around to all my neighbors, and as people were moving in their new houses, I said, hey, you need to go to board meetings. This is a pivotal change going on in this community, and you need to have a voice, and so we can have the community grow in a good and healthy way. So yeah, next thing I knew, people were asking me, hey, there's a trustee election, are you running? And I said, well, I really hadn't thought about it. And they said, well, you go to every meeting, you give a report on the park, why wouldn't you run? So I ran, and that was probably the most exciting election in the history of Hainesville, because you had enough new people. And then you had some of the longtime residents, and there were 3 trustee seats, and you had 8 candidates. Now, historically, they usually didn't even have enough people running in their history. There was sometimes vacancies on the board, or the mayor got to appoint somebody because nobody ran in the election. And now you had 8 people running for 3 seats. So we had 3 new residents, I being one of them, got on the board. And so I was served as trustee for 2 years. And then when the next mayoral election came along in 97, I ran for mayor against 2 men and won.
Nice. That's great. And you served how many terms?
3 terms. So I served my first term 4 years, and I could have sought reelection unopposed. I did not. I had family issues. My mother, who lived alone, her health was failing, and my younger son was diagnosed with autism. So family first. I did not seek reelection. But then I came back 8 years later and ran and served 2 more terms. So 8 more years. So total of 12 years. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow, that's a long stint. So obviously Hainesvillians remembered you and liked you and adored you and brought you back for 8 more years. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, not everybody likes you when you're in office, David. One thing you can't do is make everybody happy. But I will tell you something really interesting, and I stress this to anybody who's in office or is considering running for office. Those years, 8 years that I was gone from office after my 4-year term before I came back, we moved away for 2.5 years for my husband's employment. And when we came back, shortly after, I had a lot of residents approaching me, asking me to run for mayor in the next election. And what was interesting, some of the people that approached me were people that I said to him, I said, well, I'm surprised you're asking me to run again because I know you weren't very happy with the decision I made. And they said, well, Linda, we didn't like the decision you made on that particular topic, but they said at the end of the day, you always talked to us, you always gave us the facts, and you told us like it was, and that's all what we want. So
That's great. That's refreshing to hear because you don't hear that sort of want of sincerity and genuineness at the federal level.
no, whoa, what an ugly mess that is.
No, it is pretty disgusting. Anyway, that's very cool. And as like I learned not like a handful of years ago, and I didn't know this. Now, obviously, with cities, bigger cities, it's different. But like smaller towns, villages, stuff like that, whether it be Munderland, Grays Lake, Hainesville, things around here, the mayor is not a full-time job. It's actually like it's something you do as well as
we're called part-time mayors, which is we chuckle when you have the job. You really chuckle about that phrase. And the smaller your town is, it's even funnier. So Hainesville, Round Lake Park, the littler towns, Round Lake Heights, mayors in bigger villages and cities have staff. They have departments. They have people to delegate things to.
They get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and of course,
Yeah. So in a little town, you're lucky if you have, any staff, and it's minimal. And at the end of the day, a lot of times little towns have to contract out certain work because they can't support paying a salary and benefits to somebody for certain needs. Right. So at the end of the day, when there's a need, and if that need is at 3 a.m, the mayor's phone is going to ring. The mayor may not handle the whole thing personally, but the mayor's going to make the decision and approval and call a contractor if that's what's needed and whatever to address the situation. So yeah, it's not really a part-time job.
No, I would imagine. And like you're also like high profile. So like even like walking around or going to restaurants or in stores and stuff like that, you probably get approached enough. And I would count that as like, working on the clock personally.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Many times grocery shopping. Gee, I'm sorry to bother you, but do you have a minute? Yeah, sure.
Sure. That's very cool. That's very interesting. What was the state of Hainesville as far as like environmentally back in the day? I can't imagine they had much, if any, like negative environmental impact. But like, were you guys dealing with obviously now everybody's got to deal with like green technology and green businesses going in. Was anything like that occurring back then?
Well, so here's the interesting thing. So Hainesville back in the 90s, a lot of things were untouched, if you will, because they had not let development in. And they didn't even have, utilities, homesteads were on their own wells and those types of things. However, there was a company called Boys and Well that was a very a wonderful company that drilled a lot of the local wells for homeowners in the Lake County area. But Hainesville has many beautiful wetlands and woodlands.
Yep.
And what had happened over time is invasive species came in. So when I moved here, I did not know that Cranberry Lake existed because you couldn't see it. You didn't know it was there. The invasive species, were so thick and dense. It's like, there's a lake there, really? and you would take really to go in and penetrate even through the brush. You would get scarred and scratched up, and thorns attacking you, trying to get through it. So as more residents moved in, and then of course that area had development take place over there as well. The developer was required, of course, by federal law to remove, invasive species and such. But the residents and the village itself got concerned about, hey, we need to take this even further. And Cranberry Lake is a beautiful lake. Let's make it better for everyone. So there has been for quite a number of years a lot of projects, removal of invasive species, plantings of new new plants that belong there. And it got to the point, we had for a number of years a committee that was called the Wetlands and Woodlands Committee. And then in my towards the end of my second term, I finally said to the board one day, I said, that this isn't just committee work or special projects. This is part of our regular public works budget. This is who we are.
Right.
This is what Hainesville is. Right. So we're not going to stop doing this. Nice. Obviously, if you get enough of the invasive stuff removed, but there's an ongoing maintenance that you have to do. You have to be a good steward. So that became, the protocol that this is who we are, and that was part of the budget.
That's great. Yeah, no, it's you got to watch out for the development aspect nowadays, especially. I know there's a thing going on. I'm hoping to have somebody on the show about this. Like the Waukegan wants to extend its airport's runway, and they're talking about chopping down 52 acres of protected forest and
no, they're not.
They're not.
No, they're not. They're not chopping down. No. So yes.
So I just read an article about this. So please tell me.
Well, there's a lot of articles. Whenever you get topics like that, you get a lot of, there's two sides to the story.
Sure.
And since transportation is my passion, and I am the director of the Lake County Transportation Alliance, I'm actually very aware of that project.
Yeah, please.
And it's an important project. So couple things. So Waukegan National Airport is probably the best kept secret in Lake County. A lot of people don't know
we had one, right?
Yeah, most people don't. So that's unfortunate. I don't know, so I think that's unfortunate that more people didn't know that airport existed. And that airport is really important for a lot of our major employers because that's where their corporate jets are. So, the Abbott, Abbey, Baxter, those kind of companies that are very vital and very important to our economic stability in Lake County, they utilize that airport, and it's very important to them. And the FAA came out and said a number of years ago that the runway does not meet the current standards, especially for newer jets, et cetera, that type of thing. Sure. And so if the change wasn't made in 3 years, they were going to shut down the airport. Okay. And not shut it down permanently necessarily, but shut it down until changes could be made. But the point is, the changes need to be made, and the airport still has to operate while they're being made. Or the effects could be really devastating in many ways on Lake County. So let's fast forward to acreage that we're talking about. So to extend the runway, you need always at the end of the runway what they call a buffer zone, a dead zone. Obviously, you're not going to build anything or put people at the end of a runway because things happen, right? So you need open space, and that abuts Lake County Forest Preserve property. Now, let's talk about the acreage. Originally, it was bigger, and then plans get made, engineering gets made, and it's like, how do we make this work and not have to take more land than necessary, blah, 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 blah. Now, if you go look at that land, David, and I'll even take you there, that Forest Preserve property is full of buckthorn. I know about buckthorn because I pulled a lot of it out of Hainesville, okay? Mm-hmm. It is full of invasive species. Over the years, our forest preserves have grown and bought many new lands, but the battle the Forest Preserve has is the same thing. Removing all these invasive species and then doing stewardship. It's expensive. And they say, oh, you get grants for that. Well, yeah, they've gotten a lot of grants, but there isn't enough grants. Grants aren't there all the time to cover every expense. So where am I going with this? Here's the win-win. Okay, if the airport bought that land, and that's one of the words that is ruffling feathers. What do you mean the Forest Preserve is selling land? They shouldn't sell land, right. Okay? And I would agree if they were selling it so a hotel could be built or something like that, I would have issues with that. To me, this is intergovernmental cooperation because the airport has to own the buffer zone in order to make the FAA happy. Nothing is going to be built there. And guess what? They will then remove all the invasive species at their expense. So they're going to upgrade the property. It's going to be beautiful. And at the end of the day, you could still walk there and be there once the project is done.
Oh, okay.
So then there's also people that say, well, Linda, you know, I don't think forest preserve property should ever be sold, no matter what the reason is. And, you know, the forest preserve is going to pass a referendum because they have a referendum coming up. I don't know if it'll pass or not. I'm not saying it won't, but I haven't read all the details on it. But the idea is that they need more money to help remove invasive species and develop our forest preserves. So I say go for this project. It's a win-win. So, you know, I encourage you to listen to the other side as well.
Yeah.
You know, the environmentalists have come out very strong on this. And I consider myself an environmentalist, but I'm also a realist, and you need balance. Okay. The airport's not going away. Here's my concern. My personal concern is we have lost a lot of business employers to neighboring states. I remember years ago, this is years ago, when I was mayor my first term, I was at a meeting and there were Abbott executives, high-ranking executives at that meeting. And I heard a discussion about how invested they are in Lake County and they would never leave. And the only thing that would ever make them leave or relocate would be the airport. I remember that from the 90s.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to shut down an airport. We're going to try to improve it in different ways. The environmentalists have come up with some alternatives saying, oh, they don't need the land to do it. They could do certain, you know, improvements, blah, 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 blah. I don't think it's enough that's going to, quite frankly, make the FAA happy. If it does, I don't think it'll make the employers happy. And then the other argument is that, well, is this going to add more plane traffic? We see the percentage increasing very minimally. It's not going to add more traffic, but jets have changed. Mm-hmm. They run differently. Mm-hmm. Also, while they complain about the carbon emissions from jets, mm-hmm. just like with buses and trains, there is green technology coming for planes.
Oh, 100% there is, yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, so I still say no. You can't give that argument to me because that is coming just as quickly.
Yeah, okay, well, that's great. That's good to know. You know, I mean, even local, I mean, I think I read this article in the New Sun or Daily Herald or something. I try to find credible sources, but yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure local news outlets have biases as well. So okay.
Yeah, there's two sides. Yeah, there's definitely, and both sides are extreme, but I think overall this is a very good project. And so I encourage you, maybe after you have this other guest, maybe in the future, when the environmental impact study comes out, because that's what everybody's waiting for. Sure. When that comes out, you may want to have a show on that and maybe have representatives from both sides once they have that in front of them.
I like that idea. I will do that. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about your participation in PACE and Lake County Transportation Alliance. Like you said, you know, transportation is your passion, which is fabulous. It's very important. I think it's like, you know, that whole thing, like, well, the last thing a fish is going to notice is water, you know, even like it's the most important thing. Like, it's just sort of, you know, you get in your car, you go somewhere, you come home. That's, you know, you just do that. You don't think about like really how important it is. So why did you get involved in something like this?
Yeah. And it's very easy to take for granted.
Right.
So I've been lucky to have diversified experience with transportation in my lifetime. I was born and raised in Chicago. Mm. So I, you know, grew up being able to walk to either corner of my block and get on a CTA bus. I could go to Jefferson Park, get on the L. I could go downtown. When I was in high school, we went all over the place. We went to Soldiers Field. We went to concerts. That was my experience in growing up. But I've lived in Lake County since I was 19 years old. So, and the further out I moved in Lake County, the less mass transit there is. With the exception of, I have always followed the train line. So I'm in the Grays Lake, Round Lake area because the train line's here and I can get downtown. Love going downtown. Love to take the train downtown. Why would I drive downtown?
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, nightmare.
Yeah. But, out here, many places, you got to drive to the train station, or somebody has to drive you there, drop you off. There are, some buses that go to the train station. They may not run at the right times. But the biggest challenge that frustrated me when I first became mayor, and kind of a light bulb went off in my second term, is our connectivity, our lack of connectivity. Hainesville, for many years, we've always had a Pace bus go up one and down 120. But they only had a bus shelter on one side of the road. There wasn't one on the other side. And when we inquired about getting one, 120 is a state highway. So IDOT has a lot of rules and regs and what room they need for their right of way. And we had no good way to put a bus shelter in. And there's also ADA requirements, is you can't just plop a bus shelter down somewhere unless there's a sidewalk and ADA path that safely gets you there. Sure. But my argument was, well, without it, who wants to stand over there and wait for a bus? You're taking your life in your hand. And even if you can find a little space to stand, what about the elements? Is it raining? Is it snowing? Who's going to stand out there in that mess? So connectivity. When I first got on Pace and talked about more service, they said, well, we don't have that many people riding the bus. And I said, well, if you build it, they will come in this situation, because you got to give them a place that they can walk to and wait for a bus, and, not be rained on or be splattered by cars passing by. And, so let's fast forward to when I was talking with you a month ago, the announcement of the Round Lake on-demand service, which is really, I think, going to be the future of mass transit in this area, where it's curb-to-curb service.
It's so cool. Go ahead. I love this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we have two programs in Lake County, Mundelein, Vernon Hills area, and then we have had one for a couple years in Round Lake. On-demand service. It's for anyone and everyone. You don't have to be a senior. You don't have to have a disability. You call a number up to an hour prior, and or as long as 7 days in advance, and make an appointment and say, hey, I need to go to my doctor on this day. I live at this address and I need the bus to pick me up because I have to get there at this time. The bus comes to your curb. It's $2 each way.
It's awesome.
$2 to get to your destination. Now, there's a geographical circle for the Round Lake area, so you can only go within that circle. So if you're going a longer distance, you can take on demand to get to the train station, to get on the train. You can take on demand to get to a hub, such as College of Lake County. College of Lake County has a lot of Pace buses that cover Lake County, that's one of their stops. So you can catch one of the other buses there in getting off the on-demand bus. So what we did recently is we doubled the size of the Round Lake on-demand. So we now go all the way out to Fox Lake. We now have Round Lake Heights in there, Round Lake Park. If you go to pacebus.com or Google Round Lake on Demand, you can see the map and call the phone number. It is amazing. I am so excited about the service. And I think what you'll see in the future is we will have more geographical on-demand circles and are what I call the legacy buses or the legacy routes. You're going to see some of those go away, and or some of them become an express bus. So an on-demand takes you to a transportation hub where you now get on an express bus that takes you all the way out to Highland Park, let's say.
Nice. That's awesome.
So.
Can people use these as like party buses? That was good. Please don't.
But the regulations doesn't let us do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, let's not do that. That's such a fabulous thing, and it's so wonderful and just like humane and tending to the people who need these services. And I love that. And but I got to ask you, so like I'm like a thesis paper away from a master's degree in systems science, so I'm very big into like systems efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very important to me. I consider like as high as like moral value. Okay, to do it efficiently. Is it fiscally and logistically efficient?
The on-demand?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The key is, I mentioned a geographical circle. Right. It's important you don't make the circles too big.
Okay. Well, of course.
Okay. And of course, it's not just there's not a set width, or diameter, if you will. It also depends what's located within that geographic area. What are you trying to service? And so, if you can envision, like I said, a series of circles with, interconnections with express buses, if you will. Mm-hmm. I have another cool thing I'd like to tell you about.
Please.
And this also helps with efficiency. Sure. So I want everybody to be aware of an app. And the app is simply called Transit, Transit. So anybody can go on their smartphone, whether it's Apple or Droid, doesn't matter, go to the Play Store and look for the Transit app. It's free. Download it. And this is a very cool tool that we started working with this a year ago. But this month, we now have the on-demand on there. So, David, you have a trip and you're going to Oak Brook.
I don't know if you could see it. Is that it?
That's it. Yes. Okay. You got it. You're going downtown. And this is where I live. You want to know what your options are. The Transit app will show you your options because the Transit app shows you Metra, it shows you Pace, it's going to show you CTA, and now we've added on-demand. So if you live in an on-demand area, it's going to bring that option up for you. That's awesome. It's going to tell you how you can plan your trip, and if you need on-demand, you can also make your reservation through the app for the on-demand service.
This is fabulous. I just downloaded it. I'm looking at it. This looks handy.
Cool.
Yeah, especially nowadays. Like even like I might use this for like to go shopping or something, just because gas prices are so stupid. Yeah. Even though they've gone down over the last week, they're still. We're happy that it's at like a measly $3.25 a gallon. There's still something wrong.
Yeah.
But. That's fantastic. I love it. I lived in Portland, Oregon for the better part of 12 years. And like a couple months after I moved there, I sold my car. And, that's a city. It's different. I get that. But it's just very, very, what I learned was like how an area so heavily reliant on public transportation. And like Portland was known, at least at the time, I don't know what now, because all the craziness, but was able to boast of it being like the most efficient public transportation system in the country. Like it was just unbelievably cool. Again, I don't know what it's like now, but I took it everywhere, and it was just unbelievably easy to do, especially when, like, I think, I got a cell phone that was a smartphone kind of after I moved there. And then the city had an app too. And there was like outside my apartment, like right at the corner of the street was a bus stop, and I could just real time watch it show up. And like, so within a minute of it showing up, I could just go out there and I can get there on time. That it was fabulous. It was just a fabulous thing to do. Public transportation is a wonderful, wonderful thing. When I was going through my master's program in system science, my buddy and I did a study, if you will, on an intersection, one of the busiest intersections in Portland. And like, and doing research on other studies like that, like even like more legitimate than two students doing it as a study, was that the answer was that you need less cars on the road to to gridlock, to pollution, to sanity and less stress. I mean, you just need less cars on the road.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. There's efforts in a lot of areas to have like bike paths so that people can ride their bikes instead of, again, this is a lot easier in cities than it is in, like you live in Grace Lake and you work in Highland Park, you're not going to ride your bike.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no, David. So, yes, I mean, cities are known for mass transit, okay? And many cities do it very well. Some better than others, some more advanced than others, but that's what cities are known for. But now, mass transit, whether you're in a more rural area, suburban area, there's no reason why we can't have mass transit. It is a quality of life issue. It's an environmental issue, as you just said. We don't need all these cars on the road. And we don't always need to be driving by ourselves in a car. I get better. I'd rather be sitting on a train and reading my book.
Real quick, another part of it is, how wonderful it is to be chauffeured all over wherever you want to go.
Oh, yeah.
Not have to pay attention, deal with the gridlock and the anxiety involved thereof, and just not having to deal with parking. Just like, it's such a wonderful experience. Sorry, go ahead.
So let's go back to the on-demand idea, okay? And let's talk about, so I mentioned in Chicago where I grew up, I could walk to either corner of my block and get, there was a bus stop. I could catch a bus. Well, you're not going to have that in a rural area, but you could have an on-demand service that comes to your curb, picks you up, takes you where you need to go, and or takes you to an express bus and or the train station. And then the other thing that you'll see in the future, you'll see more transportation hubs coming up in certain areas. And that, so imagine, forget about train stations. Forget about a bus hub. This is a transportation hub. So maybe there is a train station there, but there's also a place where different buses, whether it's on-demand buses, express buses, are coming and going. If there's a place where TNCs, which is your Uber and Lyft service, okay? There's a place where there is electric charging stations for cars, scooters, bicycles. There's bikes that you can rent, okay, that you see all over, Everything is at this transportation hub. And guess what? There's sidewalks and or bike paths that get you to that transportation hub.
Fair enough.
That is what's called a multimodal transportation system. That is the core purpose behind the Lake County Transportation Alliance. That is our vision for Lake County, to improve the quality of life by having a, premier multimodal transportation system. So sidewalks and bike paths are just as important as an airport.
Sure, absolutely.
They're all important. It's all interconnected, and they don't work well if there's a breakdown between them.
Fair, very well said. Absolutely. I mean, modal. I mean, again, nodal and modal are two words that got kicked around our curriculum a lot. I should probably apply to this. This is like right up my alley. I could do all sorts.
We're hiring at pace. Go,
I should. I really should.
Like, go to our website, see what our positions are. It sounds like you really use your talent.
All right. Well, I'll see how the pizza delivery goes. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's fantastic. I really love this stuff, and I love how it helps. Again, there's so many benefits in so many different aspects or levels. Environmentally, economically, fiscally for individuals. Just again, the interconnectedness of our economic system too. I mean, it can help people not that aren't monetarily wealthy or whatever else. You don't even need to have a car. That's a huge savings because now you can rely on public transportation to take you to the store, the doctor, to the dentist, your friend's house, and your job. you don't you don't need a car. So now you're saving, $400 or $500 a month in a car payment and insurance bills and stuff like that, plus gas, whatever that is. That's crazy. It's just so beneficial to people who can really use it, and helping everybody get more involved in an economic system boosts an economy overall. It's better for everybody. It's not just a self-centered sort of thing. It's something that helps everybody simultaneously, which I love that too. I'm all about community. I love this whole thing very much. So is this tied? So that's PACE. Is this directly related to the County Transportation Alliance? Is there an overlap there, or what is that?
Well, there's an overlap, yes. So Lake County Transportation Alliance is an organization that's been around since, I think right around 1990. And it was started really based on the growth that was occurring in Lake County. And its main focus at that time was road development. The county was starting to experience increased traffic, and so they wanted to get more roads, widen roads, more traffic control, all that infrastructure, lights with more advanced technology that existed in Lake County.
Sure.
So, computer controlled, where you could change the timing at different times of the day, and all that cool stuff. And then over time, what has occurred is, we widen roads, we build roads. That doesn't necessarily solve all the problems. And it's back to that connectivity issue and still the mass transit issue. When I was mayor, I was involved with Lake County Transportation Alliance because transportation was a concern of mine. And then when I was no longer mayor, and I would already been serving on the PACE board for several years, the Lake County Transportation Alliance lost its executive director. And so the executive committee, executive officers were sitting around saying, well, gee, who are we going to get to do this? And we were all looking around and scratching our head. And so finally I said, well, I think maybe I could do it, I guess, because I'm not mayor anymore. And so that's how I got sucked in. But what I said at that time, and the executive committee readily agreed. Suzanne Zupek was the president of LCTA for many, many years, and she's still on our executive committee. Pete Manhart is the current president of our board. We made a commitment that, if we're going to do this, we need to rewrite and start over. And we came up with our new vision and what our core purpose was. And that's where we flipped, where roads are still important, and we'll advocate for road improvements and additions when they make sense, but only in the sense as it fits into a multimodal transportation system. So we advocate, like I said, anything from a sidewalk, a bike path, a bus, cars, TNCs, trains, airports. It's all important. One is not more important than the other. You will use these all in your lifetime, and they will make or break you.
I've taken ferries across bays, and all sorts of, boats to places, for a little. Movement on Earth is very important. You have to be able to go from A to B to C to D to pretty much live your life. And with the expectation of going to school, again, the doctor and work and everything else, these things are extremely important. And I'm glad to have somebody like you up there dealing with all this stuff, because you definitely have a passion for it, and you definitely seem to know what you're talking about, which is awesome. I wanted to ask you one more thing. Okay, what about the expense of asphalt, and still, and just the environmental aspect of it? Maybe this isn't. I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse.
Well, I don't know how much of an expert I am on asphalt. I mean, certainly, I'm not against building roads when they make sense. One thing I, as a PACE board member, I'm very supportive of is any new roads or road widening that go in. I would really like to see dedicated bus lanes. We have that in several places. We don't have it in Lake County as of yet, but that is another goal of mine, is to have dedicated. I mean, we even on the Edens have bus on shoulder because there's no true lane, but you can see a segment where there's signs, and
I've seen signs. Yeah.
Yeah, pace bus on shoulder.
Yep.
And the beauty of a bus lane, and it really is encouraging to people who are sitting there in their car stuck in traffic, is that they get to see the bus is moving. It still keeps moving. It doesn't get stuck in the traffic. No. It's only going 35 miles an hour, but that's fine.
Well, exactly. Again, like I was saying before, you get to, like, by being chauffeured, you get to avoid the anxiety of gridlock, the stress that goes with it.
And you have guaranteed on-time arrival. So when you talk about, well, why are people against, I wouldn't take the bus, I run into a couple things, it's like, well, a bus can get stuck in traffic. Well, that's true. They're absolutely right. A bus can get stuck in traffic. And if you're going a greater distance, that is where bus lanes and bus on shoulder make sense.
100%.
Then we also have wonderful new technologies coming out. So Pulse has another service. In fact, I was just at the dedication earlier this month. We have an express bus service. It's not in Lake County yet, but it is called Pulse. And I was at a ceremony for the extension of the Pulse service on Dempster. We have it on Milwaukee Avenue, and my goal is I want to bring it up Milwaukee Avenue all the way into Lake County. So, have it go by Hawthorne and all the way up into Libertyville. And so what's cool about the Pulse bus is it doesn't stop at every block. It doesn't even stop at every other block. It is an express type bus service. But its stations or bus stops where you stand to catch it are have a computer screen, if you will, and you can see real-time activity, where the bus is, when it's going to arrive. You can get other information about connecting buses in the area. The platform is also heated, so in the winter, there's no ice because it's heated.
Yep.
So a lot of nice amenities with the Pulse bus stops. And then the buses themselves are a really nice, comfortable seat. We have free Wi-Fi on almost all our buses now.
That's great.
But you have high quality Wi-Fi on that bus. You also have USB plugs.
Nice.
You can charge your
huge.
phone. Yeah, that's
Charge
real
the
huge.
phone. Right.
And we're moving towards that. A lot of our buses have them, not all, but we're getting there. So it's awesome again. And then again, there's also technology, and I'm gonna the technician at Pace is going to get mad that I'm not going to remember the term, but it's where the bus can talk to the streetlights.
Wi-Fi?
Well, no, there's
Bluetooth.
It sends a signal. It sends a signal to the street light. So the street light's going to turn red, but our bus is just a few seconds away. The bus will say, "Give me a few more seconds. Stay green longer, so I can get through the intersection."
Nice.
Yes. So we have that technology now. The only thing that it will not interfere with, that technology is also used for emergency equipment. And they will always take priority, of course. We're not trying to supersede that. But on a regular day, regular traffic, no emergencies going on, we're near that light. That light's going to stay in green and let that bus get through.
That's wonderful. That's awesome. I love that. I might just start. Well, I can't do that. I do deliveries for a living. I can't take the bus to work. But that's fabulous. Do you guys have anything to do with I'm guessing not, but the cameras at the intersections? Or is that just the police?
Oh, you mean not those nasty red light cameras?
Yeah, those. The ones that take pictures of your license.
We have nothing to do with, no. We do have cameras on our buses, and those are for safety purposes, security, but no. And we can see what our drivers are doing, So if there's an incident or an accident, we can play the footage and see exactly what occurred.
Like a
Yeah.
plane's black box or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
that's very important for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. That's awesome. Well, I thought it was going to go about half an hour, but we're already at like 50 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Time does fly. Thank you so much, Linda Soto, former mayor of Village of Hainesville, director of Pace Suburban Bus, representing Lake County, executive director of Lake County Transportation Alliance. Hang on after the end of the show. I want to ask you about those names for the Lake County history people. But thank you for all you do. You do a wonderful job, and I'm so glad I met you. And I hope to keep in contact with you and learn more about what's
I'm counting on it, David. I enjoy talking with you. I really do. And I think we might have a job for you at Pace.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to have to get online and check that out.
Okay.
All right. So, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. Till next time. Take care. All right. Well, there's a